Welcome back to the Finding Genius video series. I'm joined with Maddie, who is currently in India. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me, Kunal. Great to be here.
Maddie's the founder of Even in India, a digital health startup backed by Khosla Ventures and Founders Fund that's revolutionizing healthcare there. Maddie was previously a founder of Compass News and a principal with London-based VC. So I'm very excited about this conversation. You're the first founder that we're speaking to that's actually working in that region, and pretty inspired by your journey so far. So would love to just get into it and hear a bit about your background on the entrepreneurial journey you took, because I think we met maybe 6 or 7 years ago when you were working on Compass, and then what led you to deciding to start a healthcare company and then more so in India. But we can start way back when, and then I'll slowly get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody asked me, like, how did you move to India? Why did you move to India? And everything. So yeah, my journey has been very weird in a way, but I've been super, super lucky. So I'm Italian originally. I moved to the UK to study at university. I did the London School of Economics, and then straight out of college started my first startup. And that's when we met. So that startup was targeting a completely different space. So we were basically building a machine learning journalism startup. Ran it for about 3 years with my co-founder, who's still my co-founder now. So we've been on all the up and downs possible together. We opened an office in kind of London, one in New York. And then, we grew quite fast, but we never found product market fit. So after that, I basically decided to move to London, join the other side. So become a VC, which I absolutely adored. Basically, I was leading investments and all the verticals, all the companies in healthcare and fintech, which are like two sectors that I've always been very interested in. And after that, like about 3 years in, I actually started thinking that I wanted to build another company. And it came all, it wasn't planned at all. But my co-founder, who was by then living in India, who's like Indian originally, although he lived all of his life in the UK, said, "Hey, I think India has amazing opportunities. Do you want to come in and we can figure something out?" So all of a sudden, I decided to completely bin a job that I loved, a lot of security and everything. And I moved to India. And 1 month in, we basically, I basically started working for the Congress Party, which is the equivalent of the Democrats in the US, leading digital strategy for the 2019 national, general elections, basically. And that completely changed my view of the market and the opportunities, because when you have, massive budgets to deploy in a country like India, which is, over 1 billion people, 60 different languages and everything, and you are literally targeting every single voter, you really get a good understanding of what the problems in a country are. And that's how we came about with the idea of Even, which basically is the first managed care provider for India. And we target consumers with a whole host of digital healthcare products, as well as actually normal online, offline, products as well. And that was kind of 2 years in. 2 years ago.
Yeah. So before we get into Even, I just thought about this, but I met you and Mayank. That's your co-founder's name, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Be back then. You're one of the few stories where you met a co-founder shortly after college, built a business, kind of stayed in touch, continued to think about new businesses to launch. What did that pairing look like in terms of how you found him as a co-founder, how you both worked together, and how you maintain that co-founder relationship, especially trust of moving to India, to a whole new geography, to launch a business? But I think a lot of folks can learn from that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I angel invest a lot on the side. I've done about 30 deals and companies. And one of the problems that I see very often is problems with co-founders. And I've been extremely lucky. I have actually 2 co-founders here in this company. One is Mayank, who obviously I've been working with and basically living with 24/7 for the past 8 years now. And the other one is Alessandro, who was my best friend in elementary school. Now he's basically an engineer. He worked at Google and everything else. And Ale, I called after we decided to build Even, and he immediately moved here and started building Even with us. And Mayank, we've been through all the most atrocious experience together, as well as obviously some very good ones. And it's just amazing to have that level of trust. Really, I think the three of us are incredibly complementary in our level of skill set and what we do in the company as well as outside the company. There are people that they're the smartest people that I know, but at the same time, there's somebody that I really can rely upon, and I think they feel the same. And so that's never been a problem for us. And yeah, it's just very lucky, to be honest. You can't plan that, right? You plan to meet amazing people, but it happens.
And then what did you learn at Compass News? Or, you were working on it for a few years, and then through your investing career, perhaps some of the experiences or anecdotes or things that you've learned about starting early stage companies that you decided when it came to Even that you would approach it maybe differently, or some of the things the same, or how your roles would begin to evolve in the company. Do you have any threads that sort of hang the story together up until Even? And then we'll get into Even.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think the first and the biggest kind of learning that I had from Compass is always focus on the market, right? In a way, you can build the best product with the best team. And we did have an amazing team, right? We have the ex-managing editor of the Times working for us at Compass. So definitely it wasn't a problem of the team. But if you're going after a market that is shrinking, it's very hard. It's already hard to be very successful if you operate in a market that is growing Even is at 20% year on year, right? But if you're operating in a market that is shrinking and everybody tells you when you're 23, you're never going to make it in that particular sector, right? Because everybody has tried and everybody has failed. And obviously we were very naive and we thought we'd be different and that actually we would succeed. We really believed in the mission, which was to make information accessible to everybody, especially young people, to save democracy in a way. And yeah, you realize after a while that you can come with all the best intentions. You can put all the effort in the world into it, but it's very, very hard to go against the market, right? To try and build something from scratch in a market that, is not meant for venture growth. Definitely you can build amazing media businesses, I believe, like the ones that we were building, but they can't, at least the exact project that we were doing cannot be venture backed, I think, because it's missing the scale, right? So the reason why I moved to India is because, one of the reasons is because the market is truly, truly massive. And we believe that you can build one of the biggest companies on earth here, especially targeting the sector that we are targeting, which is healthcare in India, which is growing massively. We can talk about it later. And obviously you learn a lot about how to hire. Now we are at a scale which is much different, right? At Compass, we had a team of 30 people. Now here we have 130, and it's very different how you operate in a company when it scales, and I'm sure it will change over time as well. But yeah, we can get into how to build teams, how to hire in India, anything you want to go through.
Yeah, I think that would all be great. I think before we do that, can you describe the healthcare ecosystem in India? And as you began to approach it, given I'm coming from the US, you're coming from Italy and the UK, where these systems are a bit more developed, but perhaps a bit more about the ecosystem, what you were noticing as the challenges, how you were working with the Congress Party, and then what that go-to-market strategy began to look like for a managed care marketplace, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think let's start with the differences from kind of the US and Europe and India, right? So obviously healthcare is one of the biggest markets in India. It's worth I think over 400 billion now. So it's huge. And also not only in terms of how much the market is worth, but also in terms of how many people work in it. So over 10 million people work in the healthcare ecosystem in India. You have amazing doctors. This is why you have medical tourism and everything else. But at the same time, it's completely under-resourced. So I think the government spend in India in healthcare is less than 2% of GDP. If you compare that with the US, where it's about 18 to 20%, or even Europe, where it's 15% on average, you understand how that creates several problems, right? Number one, obviously, the most cited one is the problem of access. So India is huge. So it's very hard to say, hey, the healthcare system in India works like this, right? But if you look at like rural areas, there is just no access to good medical facilities at all. Like over 50% of people living in rural areas don't have access within 5 kilometers from their house to like hospitals or clinics or primary care. When they do have access to it, the quality, unfortunately, is still very, very low. So that's kind of number one problem. Then another problem is like the financial problem, right? Like insurance is meant to solve the financial problem of healthcare. But unfortunately, in India, the insurance market is very different from, let's say, the US, and obviously from Europe, where it's government funded most of the times and everything. So market penetration is incredibly low. You have like 10 to 15% of the population, the most like affluent, that are covered by corporate insurance. Then you have 5% of the population that has a private insurance. There is no government mandate, right, to say, hey, actually everybody needs to take it, which obviously creates negative selection bias. But at the same time, the most like there have been like kind of things that the government has done, or at least is saying that it will do in terms of spreading access to insurance. So one is Modi, like last year, mentioned that he will basically do the digital mission, which is he will try and cover the bottom 40% of the population with some kind of health products or at least health insurance. Obviously limited, but that will be funded by the government. We're still looking to see how that kind of looks like, but that will cover the bottom 40%. Then you have the top 15% that is covered by corporate or retail, but there is many people that are just completely not covered, right? And this is why 50 million people every single year go below the poverty line just to cover for healthcare. And on top of that, you have obviously the highest out-of-pocket expenses that you can see anywhere. So in India, people just pay out of pocket for healthcare, which is something that you don't see anywhere else. And this creates, obviously, on the plus side, a reduction of prices, because obviously in like insurance, like in developed insurance market, you have prices going up. In under insurance market, like prices going down. These are just few of the kind of challenges that you see in India. But there are many more, but obviously they also create massive opportunity, I think, for new entrants targeting the market.
But then how do you go about, when you're looking at this entire ecosystem and you're segmenting the population and saying, this is where we want to serve, what was your approach to begin doing that in a crowded market, and especially while you're building that knowledge as an outsider to the ecosystem at that point in time? And now you're an expert on Indian healthcare, but at least at that point in time of the areas that you wanted to focus or the company was going to focus, how did you begin thinking about that and the partners you would need to build with, the regulation side? Are there strategies that founders working in new geographies should think about?
Well, the go-to-market is probably the most interesting thing to do in India, right? Because obviously you've got like 60 different languages, like 1 billion people. So you really need to be specific on who do you want to target, not only because obviously it changes the comms and everything else, but in particular because you need to literally change the product and the prices when you're targeting different segments. So right now, and I think this is the easiest way to start, we are targeting basically the middle class in urban areas. So we are in the top cities in India, Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, and also like, kind of tier 2, but very big cities like Hyderabad and Chennai, and targeting the population that wants access to better products, because our product right now is like very competitive in terms of price, but definitely not cheap. And the reason why we start there is because once you've proven that your claims and underwriting works for that particular segment with that price, you can actually start lowering prices and create products that are targeted for everybody. So definitely the mission is at some point to be able to serve everyone, but you start with the population that can actually afford a product that is a little bit premium, right? Obviously, because we have so many features and include so much right now. And in terms of like regulatory, It's definitely not a space where you can move fast and break things, right? Like not at all. So we say to all employees, whenever like we want to hire people, is do you actually want to stay here? Do you want to build this for the next 10 years? Because this is not a company that you come in 2 years, make a bunch of money and just go on build something else, right? This is a long-term project for sure. And the reason is because the regulations in India can really block companies. We've seen this with like from TikTok that obviously people are familiar in the US to like Dream11, like gaming, betting, everything. And from one day to another. So it's it takes time to actually build those relationships. We had a few issues, by the way, when we started, obviously, because the product is so innovative and there is not a regulation that actually exactly covers managed care providers that touch upon primary care, secondary care, tertiary care all together, right? But right now we've been, we're cautiously optimistic on where we stand. We've been invited to all the kind of roundtables, discussions from the IRDA, which is the regulatory body in India. And we are now really seen as one of the key players in the market. It wasn't like this when we started. And this regulation actually creates two things, right? On the one hand, obviously, it's very risky for companies, but at the same time, it really blocks new entrants in the market, right? So you can have a massive competitive advantage if you actually are seen as one of the key entities in the market. And people are, new entrants might be scared to actually enter completely from scratch if they don't have the resources, the backing, the network that it's necessary to actually make it.
Right. And then I do want to talk a bit more about the regulation piece, but before we get there, what is the specific product that you all decided to offer and why? Was it more connections between primary care and that segment that you mentioned of the population? Why you didn't take certain US or European models like the One Medical or the Row or the HIMSS or drug fulfillment and capsule and those certain models that do exist in other markets and say, okay, we're going to retrofit those for this geography, which we've seen happen in other geographies and they often fail. But how did you think about the first product that would be offered to the first patient and how has that evolved to where you're at now? Before I ask a bit more about the regulatory side.
Yeah, very good question. So let's give a little bit of a background, basically. So in India, the insurance products that are here are very, very bad. So they basically only cover hospitalization and emergency. There is nothing with like OPD, meaning, tests, diagnostic, preventative healthcare. And because the majority of people don't have access to insurance, health awareness in general, in terms of prevention, is very, very low. Why? Because obviously you're much less likely to actually do a health body checkup if you have to pay for it than it is covered, right? Like in the US, in Europe. So we started from this particular assumption and we basically ended up building the first really managed care provider in India. What I mean by that? I mean that we do primary health in-house. So we have a team of doctors, like incredibly experienced doctors that can be in touch with any of our members 24/7. Our members join. We do a complete health body checkup. We realize what are the issues that they have. For example, they might have a chronic condition like PCOS or type 2 diabetes. In that case, the doctor works with them literally on a one-on-one basis, making sure that the chronic condition is managed and it gets better. Or they can be completely healthy and might want to have another goal, right? Like losing weight, quitting smoking, or things like that. So that's the primary care side. But unlike any other kind of primary care startup, we also look at secondary and tertiary care. So all of our members need to follow the clinical path that is set out by our physicians. So you come with us because you have a headache, but you also come to us if you actually have a lump on your breast. We have built basically on top of all of our kind of processes and company, a massive network of clinics and hospitals that provide like super high quality services to our members wherever they are, super convenient, both at home and again in any of the clinics and hospital around. And we basically have also worked with our insurance partner to provide a hospitalization product that we've built from scratch that is much better than anything else around. So basically what we do in very short is we provide unlimited OPD, which is anything from consultations to diagnostics to tests, as well as hospitalization cover that is the best in the market, completely cashless, much higher than anything that is around.
And how have you scaled this platform in India? How does it work? What do you invest in for growth in that market? And is it similar to other geographies?
You mean the go-to-market?
Yeah.
Okay, so we started initially in just one city, which was Bangalore. And after we've built a very kind of big customer base, as well as an incredible network of kind of hospitals and clinics, we decided to scale. And now, obviously, we raised more money and we are able to actually launch Pan-India, which we've done 3 to 4 months ago now. And obviously, now that we're targeting different cities, it's amazing to see how the go-to-market completely changes, right? In Bangalore is a city that is very similar in a way to San Francisco, right? Everybody's a startup enthusiast, at least. They're very used to tech, buying products online, even if the price is very, very high. Whereas, for example, in places like Delhi and other cities, people are less likely to buy things online without ever speaking to somebody. So we have built a sales force from scratch that I think has been one of the most interesting things I've ever done in my life. And sometimes, they act like agents, basically, and they explain the product to people that we target on other platforms, like obviously Meta, influencer marketing, PR. There are a bunch of different things that we do.
Right.
That are very similar, to be honest, to what you would do in the US, right? It's not that different. Right. Obviously, there are when it comes to PR, there are publications that are completely different, as well as places that target different people. We use a lot WhatsApp, that is different in the US from the US, maybe as a marketing channel, but overall is not too dissimilar. And we basically have a sales force for people that are not comfortable just purchasing online, something that actually costs a lot of money, as well as completely direct and assisted sale that we do as well in cities where, or with people target demographics as well that are a bit younger, that are more comfortable purchasing online.
Right. That's very interesting. Congratulations on all the success. But could you talk a bit about maybe some of the assumptions you were making going in as a founder, operating in that geography, or maybe some of the most shocking things that you've seen as operating as a founder, or some of the anecdotes or learnings that you've had while you've been doing that there? Yeah,
absolutely. I think, India is amazing, and I'm incredibly enthusiastic about it. But there are a few things that, surprised me for sure. The number one, and because for us it's also so important, is to build obviously an exceptional team. And you come in the market and you realize that unfortunately there is not an amazing culture when it comes to teams and employees, right? There are a few things that we thought could be done much, much better. And this is the reason why we actually were able to attract top tier talent as early as at pre-seed and seed stage, basically. And obviously now we have a team that, everybody says is basically the best in the market, right? For the stage that we're at. Number one, obviously, people are, employees tend to not have equity, or if they do have equity, they don't have a lot of it. So we have entered the market being extremely generous when it comes to that, at least 3 times the market. And this allows you to attract the very best talent that understands what equity is and that really wants to build it with you. So the first principle, even when it comes to the culture, is that every single person, including customer service, has equity in the company. And that is a very good way to align, right? To align with them and to align with the mission and the incredible things that we have to do. Everybody works extremely hard because everybody's an owner in the company as well. The second one is just the culture more generally, right? Like you tend to have, people tend to be very respectful of authority, right? And so they might not push back initially, which obviously kills creativity entirely, right? So we started saying, hey, this is not obviously how we want to work. And now we've built a culture which is absolutely the opposite, right? But the majority of the time it was actually us pushing for, pushbacks, especially initially. Now, obviously, it's not like that anymore. And the third is just transparency. Like people, and even in startups, and there are a ton of startups that obviously are doing amazing work when it comes to like hiring and teams. But I'm just talking about the general vibe, right? Transparency is not really a thing. So one thing that we've done when we started even was to publish a career page where we had the exact salary and equity compensation for every single vertical in the company and every single role in the company. And that created like shock in the market. The thing went completely viral because it's something that they've never seen, right? But we want to make sure that everybody inside the company knows what everybody else is making and why they're making that. So they don't start like questioning, hey, I think that guy earns more than me, but that's unfair, right? We need to be extremely meritocratic when it comes to obviously salary, compensation, equity, etc. And I think we're doing that very, very well at Even. And we don't want that, people that can negotiate better can earn better salaries, because that's not what good salaries are for, right? It's not just about negotiation. Right. So yeah, that one went viral. And obviously we're trying, since we started 2 years and some months ago, not one person has left voluntarily. Even. So wow. That's amazing. And I think we are building a culture that is very, very unique, especially in this market, basically.
Congratulations. That's amazing. And I know we're almost up on time, but there's one question that I wanted to ask, because as I look to new markets and I look to kind of new business models within those markets, I find it always inspiring and interesting talking to founders who ramp up very quickly and learn a lot about an ecosystem or about a space where they've had no former experience. So you were working in media and you were working in the US and London before this. What's your process, whether it's with Even or not, but your process of learning and ramping up quickly on a space, especially maybe with the Even experience that you've had, or specific areas that you guys are continuing to expand in geographically, or new product types, or thinking about managed care, thinking about regulation? How do you typically learn and get smart on something?
It's all about the team, especially the first employees and the first people you work with, right? So before we actually raised any money, we were able to, let's say, a few people, especially two in the team, that were completely instrumental in us being able to grow so quickly in this market. So one is somebody called Ronak, who was the head of risk at two standalone health insurers already. He's one of the most renowned people in the entire industry. And it was very hard to get her on board before we had any money, but we managed to do so. And now is the chief risk officer. And the second one is somebody called Animesh, and he was the head of operations at Narayana Healthcare, which is a massive hospital chain in India. So once you have that knowledge, you have that network, you have that expertise, it's much, much easier to actually obviously grow very fast, get things done very, very quickly. And I think that's the most important thing, right? To have the right team. Second is obviously resources. We were incredibly lucky to be backed by from some of the best investors globally, like Founders Fund, Khosla Ventures, right. And obviously having those resources really, really helps in scaling up quickly, in being able to hire the best team, but also compensate them well, and everything else. And, on a personal level, be very adaptable, right? And making sure that you are actually bringing something that is unique. And I think we really are doing that, right? We bring an expertise in building, teams and culture that is very, very different. An expertise in having experienced products that are much better than the ones that are here, that made it possible for us to create something that was completely unexpected and completely unseen in the market, right? On top of that, making sure that you have the right expertise and people on board. We have a medical board that is people renowned like globally, from directors at Kaiser Permanente to directors at the NHS, etc., that was just not seen here, and it would be impossible if we were not outsiders in a way. So it's like, how can you leverage the fact that you are an outsider and make it a massive strength rather than just a weakness, basically?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Well, Maddie, so I thank you so much for the time. I know we're up, but I really appreciate you taking the time so early. And I wish you all the best. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Kunal. It was great to be here. And yeah, have a great day.
All right, talk soon. Bye.